Although I'd imagine there's not as much pressure when it's not your own.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot to do.
How does it like compare with your own concert when you tour on your own?
Well, it's the same thing. You just don't. There's less pressure in some ways. Yeah, coffee. Is there coffee around? You know, I don't have to sing all night, which is a great deal. Oh, thank you. It's a lot less pressure not have to sing all night because you don't have to worry about really what shape your voice is in.
Is this something you think you could get used to? Or is it just a one shot?
Well, no, I don't think I'd do it forever because, you know, we got too much to do. You know, but I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I like it a lot. You know, it's kind of like a working holiday. You know.
Would Dylan be the only person you'd be willing to back, or are there other?
I don't think they're absolutely the only person.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Absolutely nobody else.
Can't think of anybody.
Has he been that much of an influence on you, or is it just somebody you've always held in a certain reverence?
Well, Bob's been an influence on everybody, I think. He's a big influence on us, yeah. Probably, you know, a good third of our trip. I think Bob Dylan, let me think, I don't think there's anybody else that we would do this for that's still alive.
How about among the dead?
Among the dead?
Yeah.
That's a strange question.
Well, a lot of people would say like Elvis.
I'm sure Elvis we would have done it for you. Otis, yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's hypothetical, you know, it's kind of hard to say.
By the way, I should add that most of the questions here have been thought of by Mr. Masui, and we usually do interpretation, but seeing as how we only have a half hour or so today,
I see.
I'll just do it directly. So if you feel offended by any of these...
no, I'm not offended.
Pack Up the Plantation is the name of the latest record. Does that have anything to do with your participation in Farm Aid, the name itself, Pack Up the Plantation?
No, I'd done this album called Southern Accents long before Farm Aid, which was a coincidence in a sense because it dealt with those people in the southern aspect anyway. Pack Up the Plantation was sort of the end of an era for us. We'd done this tour with the big Southern Plantation and the whole thing, and it was 10 years, our 10th year together. And it was really just nonsense, but I think it probably just means the end of that period. I don't think we'll be writing Southern albums anymore.
Is that right?
Well, not now, no. We're on something else now.
What's that?
Well, you have to wait and see.
Well, actually, the Southern thing was quite...
And John Cougar will do it if I tell you.
Come on, he's not that type of guy, is he?
I don't know. Just kidding, John.
Actually, nobody really expected the Southern departs there. I mean, considering the type of albums you made when you first came out.
Mm-hmm.
When did you just start to adopt the Southern thing? Was it with Southern accents, or was it with, what is it?
Well, I always had Southern songs, you know, I mean, people didn't know this. We always had songs like Louisiana Rain and Magnolia, and it was always references to the South. When you grow up there, you don't really get it out of your system, really. It was in '83 when I went back there. I'd been living in California for about 10 years. And I went back there in '83 to spend some time, and then I thought it'd be an interesting thing, since so much music came from there anyway, most rock music, blues and jazz, that I'd take these musical styles. And also I didn't want to write an album of love songs at the time. And so it was just a wealth of material. You know, I didn't try to tell the story of the South. I couldn't in an album. But I just used it as a theme.
Is it the South to you, the South through Tom Petty's eyes, or is it nothing that bold? Is it more just...
It's mostly an album of characters, you know. Most of the people in those songs are different characters. It's not always Tom Petty.
But I mean, basically through people you've met.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Just my observations, you know.
How did it feel being back there when you went back?
Oh, I felt great. I just thought it was time to give them a nod in a sense other than sort of like Molly Hatchet style. right? Just to give them a nod. It was just an idea, really. It's been years since I wrote that album. I wrote that album in '83. So I'm pretty far down the line from it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You say it's something that's hard to get out of your system, though. What exactly is it like to be a Southern boy? I mean, is it something you always carry around with you?
Yeah, I think so. It's like being Japanese. you can leave, but you don't lose that. Yeah, it's all right. Bring it in. You don't lose that, you know. I've lived in California for a long time. I don't think I'd have written that album if I'd lived in the South all that time. It was sort of thank you. Sort of like coming back, you can see both sides of the fence. If I'd been there all the time, I don't think it would have seemed that interesting to me.
What aspects of your character do you attribute to your being brought up in the South?
Probably my temper. I don't know. I have a pretty strong sense of independence at times that maybe comes from that.
Strong sense of independence?
Yeah, I don't think all Southerners are. You can't really they're not exactly a cliche.
Yeah.
I was more interested in the aspects of the strong sense of family that's there, the sense of tradition that's there, right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
How much of the Civil War aspects is still lingering on there. Things like that, you know, and just I just found a lot of it. I think there's a lot of soul there, you know, a lot of very soulful people. I didn't try to paint them right or wrong. I just tried to, just use the characters.
He sees Southern accents as carrying some certain clear-cut, not clear-cut, but political leanings of one sort or another. That may not be a fair assumption.
No, it's not a political album in any sense. Not in any sense. It's just it's short stories. It's not a political album.
You've never had any sort of political element in your music at all?
Oh, probably, but that album wasn't meant to be political. I don't really believe in. Well, I believe in it. I've never really written a political album, I don't think. You know. I'm more interested in making people think for themselves. You know, I think that's the most important thing, is just to do your own thinking. I don't think a rock musician is really a good person to listen to for politics.
Who would you listen to?
I don't listen to anybody.
Just read the newspaper?
I make up my own mind, you know, which is about the only thing you can do. You can't listen to anybody. I don't follow leaders. You know.
What about the farm thing? What interested you in the farm problems?
It was just a very clear-cut thing. I come from generations of farmers. I'd just written this album. I'd spent a lot of time down there with people that make their living doing that. I was very aware of the problems. Neil Young came to me and asked me if I'd play in that show, and gave me a long talk about it, and I was more than happy to do it.
I'm sure by that time you said to Neil, you don't have to tell me about it, I've seen the severity for myself.
Yeah, I did, but Neil knew it very, in and out. All the Neil had been to Congress, he'd been there, and knew about what bills could be passed and this and that and what. So that was really what he had to talk to me about. I was just concerned about, where's this money going to go, and what actually is going to be done with it. And it was really the point of the show. We didn't expect to solve the problem. It was just to point the problem out to a lot of people, which I think was successful.
What about the extent of your involvement? Did it begin and end with the show there, or have you followed up in some way?
Only in the sense that we still send out, like with all our bios and stuff, we still put in the farm stuff. We put the literature in. That's really all I can do, and talk about it when I'm asked. I'm not a good campaigner, but that's really all I've done. I think Willie and those guys are still pretty much making it a daily thing. We're not that sort of people. Really.
But if they ask you to do something else, you might consider
it. Yeah.
Getting back to Dylan here, having actually played with him on stage, have you discovered a side a side to Dylan that you hadn't known about before?
Well, I'm asked that. I never thought about Dylan that much. I never thought about how many sides there were. There's an album called I didn't know
That's right.
another side. Bob's just, I'm always asked to describe him as I say he's a nice bunch of guys, you know.
Well, you must have found out something about him now that you were touring with him, though.
I like Bob. I get along with him very well. He's a good, sort of, hard to see someone as, people have certain images of people. They have images of me, they have images of Bob, you know, images of everyone, but really is just sort of like a friend. A musician, I think, is probably the best description of Bob. A musician, you know, someone who really lives music, likes to play music, likes to get up and sing the songs, you know. I think that's probably the most accurate description.
You don't feel any generation gap or anything with him?
You know, I really don't.
Is that right?
I don't feel any generation gap. He has. It's kind of nice in a way because he's turned me on to a lot of music that I missed, like early folk music and stuff I didn't know much about. Woody Guthrie and Ramblin' Jack Elliott and people like that. And in the same sense, I think we kind of let him know about things that he didn't know about, you know. So, but no, it doesn't really seem like there's a generation gap. You know.
Well, he seems like he's very open to new things.
He's a pretty aware person. He's pretty aware of what's going on.
Then again, people who have known him says he can't really think in a linear manner. They're saying he's always coming up with non sequiturs and.
Well, they don't know him.
Okay. He makes a lot of sense then.
It makes perfect sense.
All right. Rather than dwelling on that there.
It's the old ask a stupid question, you know.
Clear up that.
Yeah.
He wants me to dwell a little bit on this, your identity as a person from the South. You apparently come from Florida.
Yes.
And does that make any difference as opposed to, say, coming from another area of the South?
Not where we're from. A lot of people, I think Florida's image is Miami, which is really, Florida's probably bigger than Japan. We're from the northern part, the swamp area. Alligators and palmettos, and it's really close. It's 2.5 hours from Georgia, where we live. So it's, you know, it's very southern. Florida's very southern, really, till you get to about Fort Lauderdale. Then it turns into New York on the beach. But I've only ever been to Miami 2 or 3 times in my life. Well, it was a 7-hour drive from where I live.
Could Florida become your Indiana in John Cougar terms?
I wouldn't do that.
Really?
No. It's easy to be a big fish in a small pond. I'm more interested in the world.
Is your family still back there?
My father lives there, and I have a few aunts and uncles there. My brother lives in Tallahassee now, but that's it.
Do you think that's an effective kind of approach, putting the spotlight back on a small town?
Well, I did it. Seems to be very in fashion now to do that. We're the kind of people that once it becomes fashionable, we'd rather move on than dwell on it. It's like all these people talking about American music and stuff. I mean, we were singing about that 10 years ago. Been American all my life, you know. I don't think it's important what country the music's coming from if it's good. I think that's sort of like just a way of the press having something to talk about, you know. A way of, it's probably true, there is a lot of good American groups there, but they've always been there. They were there 2 years ago, too, you know. They were there 3 years ago, too. It's just, I think now, if anything, we would shy away from doing that because so many other people are doing it, which it's always been our manner to sort of, we enjoy rather, you know, being a little unpredictable.
I can't imagine you doing much else, though. I mean, any kind of music that doesn't really reek of American sound.
Well, that's in my blood. I can't help that because, you know, that's the music I love. That's the music I grew up with. So I don't think I'm gonna. A lot of people thought that in Southern Accents that I'd gone a little wacky, you know, when things like that come around here no more. When that was released as a single, there were a lot of people who thought that, you know, what's he doing now? Now it doesn't seem so strange to them. You know?
That was another question here. Was that the electronic sound of that? Was that owed to the contributions of Dave Stewart? Or was it
I don't think so. I think most of this album was done before David ever showed up. So we did write that song together. I don't think David played anything on that song, but the sitar. He might have played a keyboard or some kind. Most of that stuff is the Heartbreakers. So maybe, you know, somewhat, I'm sure. Yeah.
What were his basic contributions to the album, if you could sum them up?
Well, the main thing that we did together was we wrote these 3 songs rather quickly. I had an interest in making a sort of psychedelic sort of sound with some of the stuff, which David liked that idea quite a bit. And that single, we wanted to make a single, as per se, you know, something that was specifically meant to be a single. We worked for nearly 4 weeks just on one song. That song could have, depending on what faders were brought up, the whole arrangement could change, the whole beat could change. You know, there were 5 bass lines, 3, 4. It was just a real studio record, which both of us had been wanting to do for a long time. So that was really David's contribution. David came in, that album was 2 years in the making. It was originally intended to be a double album, of which the other album is still on the shelf. David came in near the end. I think his main contribution was a burst of energy, because we were all just a little bit burnt. And when he came in near the end, it was a good burst of energy, because he's a very energetic guy.
He was very excited about what he heard then.
Oh, yes, very much.
And he did take a listen and say, oh, well, you could do this here and do that there, or was it basically just...
Well, David always has an idea, whether it's good or bad. He always has an idea. Well, let's do this, you know, let's do that. And really, it was kind of like finding a new friend. We've become very good friends. He's actually my neighbor now. He's bought a house walking distance from mine. So it was kind of like, you know, when you meet a new friend, it sort of opens a lot of doors and makes everything fresh again. So that was the nicest thing about it. But we had a lot of fun, you know. We just had a lot of fun.
I don't recall, just because of my own ignorance, I don't recall you having made collaborations with other people in the past.
I never had. Only with Mike, and not outside the band.
Yeah.
Yeah, never. Never had.
You talk about opening new doors. Could this mean more collaborations with other people? Or
Well, see, with this album, we originally, when we started out, we didn't want to do that because we didn't want to be seen as me and a backing group. And we were very careful not to let anyone else in. It was a very closed circle of people. For the Southern Accents album, I thought, and we all thought from the beginning, why don't we let some of our friends play on this or have some input, just to take, we wanted to take the music somewhere else. We thought, well, we've done the old 12-string and organ stuff, all we want to do it. Let's try to find something else. And I think it was successful in that we let a lot of people around, and it kind of woke us up. You know, having Jack Nietzsche there, or Robbie, or, you know, all these people. There were a lot of people, too, that didn't get on the album. They were around, you know. And it was a very creative thing. In the next album, I think that we'll probably go exactly the other way. It'll be just the 5 of us again. Because they've all become fairly successful songwriters, you know. Almost all of them. And there's also Stan and Howie, very good singers, so I think they'll probably let them sing some of the songs on the next album. And I think it'll probably be more of just a straight rock album than experiments.
So these guys have basically matured while being members in the band. Then. I think that they've changed a lot from the outset.
Well, they've certainly become the most in-demand session people there are. They've played with everyone. they've all had hit records on their own. Everyone but Howie, and I think Howie's probably going to be the biggest one of them all when he puts his record out. So there's a sense, people asked, does that weaken the band? I don't think it did. I think it gave everyone a sort of sense of confidence. I think it strengthened the band, if anything, because it was good that we had that year apart where I didn't do anything. And they were very busy, and I think it let them know that they weren't just riding on my coattails. I think that was important for them to have some recognition on their own, and I don't think they're mad to do sessions anymore. I think they're all sort of tired of that. But I think you'll see them take a much bigger part, especially Mike Campbell in the next album.
Pardon me for going back a bit, but Don't Come Around Here No More came out at a time when, like Prince had out Raspberry Beret, there was the Paisley.
It was before that.
Before that?
Yes.
But it was kind of close, though.
Yeah, we were very surprised when he came out with the psychedelic album.
And then there was Paisley Underground when we went away, neo-psychedelic bands in Britain. Kind of this resurrection of the psychedelic sound. How is it that you stumbled on it, though?
I think I was ahead of those people. We think it's very funny now that, we could see these kids even in Japan with the little glasses and the paisley shirts. Because when we were doing that, it was just a joke. I think Dave Stewart was around that time. And I had gotten into this thing, anti-fashion, where everyone was wearing very short hair. And so I'd let mine grow like really long, because it just seemed to upset people. And so then it just went step by step, Oh, then let's get some of these and this jacket and this shirt, and we weren't trying to create fashion, though all of a sudden it became very fashionable. To which we immediately stopped doing it.
Do you think quirky moves like that are possible in the future? Like all of a sudden you start dressing like John Travolta?
John Travolta? No.
You pull up the Saturday night...
I don't know. It was just an accident. When I brought the record in, the record company thought, oh dear, not psychedelia, that's not going to go, And I wasn't thinking about it. The band even thought it was a little weird, I think, for a while, though. Pretty soon they were wearing the same clothes. But now you can buy them in, department stores.
The thing is, psychedelia was very controlled psychedelia.
It's a different sort of psychedelia.
Yeah, well, it's not something you have to take acid to enjoy. It's a short 4-minute songs.
And then we did, I think the biggest probably, well, we were really shocked when Prince did it at the same time. We just went, wow, how weird, We thought that was very strange, because it was within a month, and then I think the video we made had a lot to do with that sort of trend. But psychedelia is never meant to last. It was only meant to shake things up. I just felt that everything I was hearing on the radio was very predictable. And I felt that most of the artists, especially in America, do this for 10 years, It's got to go somewhere. You got to do something different. So I think what the psychedelic thing did for us was just shake everything up to where I think now I'd be comfortable doing a very straight rock record, because everyone probably expects me to do some weird psychedelic record. I don't know where we'll wind up. But that was all. I think the last time there was psychedelia, we wound up with Elton John or something, Or, it just shakes things up. It's not meant to last.
Speaking of Prince, there in an interview recently, I think in Musician Magazine, I don't want to do that.
プリンス
いいさ、ミュージシャン。ミュージシャン magazine.
あ、何彼のあれはレコード
Oh, it was in Record Magazine. You praised Prince as a very American artist, American that he was doing his own thing, doing something very unique and independent.
Yeah, he is.
I guess that's why it was a shock to you that he came out with that at the same time you did. Have you heard his recent album, the new one?
Which one?
Just came out, I believe.
Oh, I haven't heard his newest one, no. I've been on tour or something.
How about albums by any other new artists that they're noticed?
I haven't heard much because I've been out here on the road. The last band I heard that I thought showed some potential was the Del Fuegos. I think they're going to be an interesting group. Just a very raw garage band, really. Then I saw them in a bar one night, and I think that there's some promise there. There's probably a few more, but I can't think of them at the moment.
When you first came out yourself, did you liken yourself to any bands? Like, I thought, they're a lot like me. I wonder how far they're going to go.
When we came out, there was a trend that was at the height of disco, and in the 70s when there wasn't much going on. When we came out, people thought we were a very strange band. There were a lot of bands that were playing the same circuit. We played a lot of bands. We would play with punk bands a lot. We were on shows with Blondie, the Ramones, Elvis Costello. I think we felt a kinship to those. Well, really, our first hit, our first album was a hit in England. Was the first place where we were ever recognized. So I think there were a lot of English bands that we felt. There were a lot of people that knew something was wrong. It took a couple of years for us to break through, for everybody to break through. And then they called that the new wave, which we still find very amusing. At how many years they could call something the new wave. It was, but that was kind of like what that was like. There were a lot of bands, yeah.
Speaking of which, you mentioned Costello here. He wants you to give a short evaluation of three artists here. The first being Costello, the second being Nick Lowe, and the third being Huey Lewis. What the relevance of these three are to you, I guess, is something.
Elvis Costello, I remember seeing him when in London before he had a record out, when he just played by himself with a guitar, and I thought he was a very good songwriter. And I admire his sense of adventure. Nick Lowe I could do 2 hours, and he's one of my closest friends in the world. I love old Nick.
Is that right?
Yeah, I just saw him before I left on the tour. I spent 2 days with him. I visit him in London now and then. He's a dear friend of mine, and highly overlooked. I think highly overlooked, but he's a wonderful fellow. True. Really has a big heart, old Nick.
What do you like best about him?
What do I like best about Nick?
Let's say as a musician.
As a musician, his sense of humor, I think, which is very important, which is vanishing, I think. Huey Lewis I can't see any use for at all.
Is that right? What's that?
I just don't see any use for that at all. Sounds like production line music to me. It doesn't sound, I don't hear any soul or any, I don't believe a word he says. I don't believe nothing that guy sings. I look for believability. A good vocalist to me is someone I believe. But that stuff just sounds like production line stuff to me. He's probably a nice guy.
Oh, anything else from the top of the charts that sounds credible to you?
I think Mellencamp's starting to get pretty good. I think that it took him a while. I think that he had to figure it out. That he always meant well, but I think it's just taken him in the last couple of records that he's finally figured out how to get it across. I actually called him up when I heard that song Pink Houses, and I phoned up old Mellencamp and said, I said, well, now you've done it, I said, me and Bruce been trying to write that song for 10 years, and I think you did it,
Is that right?
And he's a nice guy, John. And I think that it just took him a while to figure out how to get it across. But I think now he's on to something. Who else is on the charts? I love the Talking Heads. I think that album's brilliant. Brilliant album.